Hello viewers, welcome to another edition of Lawyers Alert's Literacy series, which comes to your screen every Thursday, 11 a.m. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Aisha Abdullah and I am Lawyers Alert's media officer. Today, we'll be talking about 5 ways the media can improve its reportage on gender-based violence. The media has a huge role to play, and of course I know that we all can agree to that. And also, the media can either mar or make a story. The way the media presents a story goes a long way in how the people takes it and how they understand a particular case or a particular scenario. Without further ado, I'm going to move right into today's discussion. 1. It is very, very important that we try to be very accurate and use the right language. Most often, the public do not even understand the difference between when you say domestic violence, sexual and gender-based violence, or when somebody is being molested, or early child marriage. But how the media reports such a story is going to help the public to understand better what all of these terms mean. So it is important that as a media personality or as a journalist, that you try not to mince these words. You try to be as clear as possible and as accurate as possible. You don't also have to be a journalist before you can want to tell a story or before you want to carry out a story or an investigation about a sexual and gender-based violence case. So how you report it goes a long way. Try as much as possible to understand this different meaning. If a person has been raped, then it should be clearly stated as rape. We should try not to change the meaning of what has happened, because by the time you're changing what has happened, you've definitely altered the story, which is wrong. And we all believe and know that journalists should always be truthful and unbiased. The next one is you should try to tell the victim story in the best of ways, and also try not to victim blame. I've been in places where people would say, oh, what was she putting on? Oh, it was her dressing. Why was she going around at night without having anyone with her? All of these things are wrong. When a person has been abused or when they've been molested or when they've been raped, the first thing we should do is not to start victim blaming. What were you wearing? That is a very, very wrong question to ask. You telling the story, you are the voice of a victim. Of course, you don't need to mention the victim's name. We've seen cases where you say, Amina, not real name, is 12 years old who was forced into an early marriage. Or we see instances where we say Tracy, not real name, or we even say Miss X. All of this are to protect the victim's identity. You don't necessarily have to mention these victims if they want to keep themselves anonymous before you can tell their story. As a media personality, or as you, a journalist, or whoever is writing a story on cases like GBV, you are the voice of such a person. You are the voice of the victim or the survivor, and however you tell the story would go a long way. So we should try as much as possible to tell the truth and represent well. The next one is, most of the times when we see cases where people are talking about how people who have gone through sexual and gender-based violence, how people who have been abused psychologically, emotionally, physically, they don't include how they can get help. So this will bring me to the next point. Always try to include how can these people get help. The experts that can help them, if it is maybe an organization such as Lawyers Alert, that's us, the persons who reach out to us and tell us that, oh, they got the information online or through the help of a friend or relative. So try as much as possible to give these survivors or victims names of organizations who can help them, information about organizations who can help them, or individuals who can help them. Or if you have any SAC centers around you, okay, how can they locate these places? How can they get help in these places? Try to give them detailed information. And whenever you're carrying out, maybe you're writing a news story, try to include this, because there are also people out there who are not talking about their story that would just come across maybe an information about how they can get help and maybe leave an abusive marriage or relationship. And just because you've written it out there or because you've stated it out there, you'll be able to help 1 or 2 persons. The media has different medium. If you're talking about a program on air, if you're talking about a jingle on air, try as much as possible to include information that will be very, very important. How can they get help? If they should have to reach out to the nearest police station, you can include that. If there's a number they should dial, you can include that. All of this is going to help these victims to get help promptly. Lawyers Alert is working on a short code, and this short code is going to help people who are being abused, or maybe they are going through cases of GBV to get help. with this short code, and this is going to be free for them to access. The project is still ongoing. These are kind of information that you should put out there that can help victims who are experiencing or going through GBV to get help easily. The fourth point we'll be talking about is speaking to an expert when working on a story. Not all journalists can be a specialized reporter in cases of GBV. But then when you reach out to experts, they can put you through. You reach out to public health enthusiasts, people you know have deep knowledge about cases like this, maybe doctors that can give you more information about what this victim is going through. But by the time you're just trying to assume, you're trying to just say, okay, gender-based violence is just, I don't know, maybe when a lady is being beaten, you've told the public the wrong thing, and this can go a long way to change the mindset about what people actually think and know about cases like this. So you should try as much as possible to speak to experts you believe that have a knowledge about a particular case you're working on. This would help you to have a detailed and proper information, and your news story can come out very, very rich and also pass the right information. Speaking to experts also does not mean that you don't know what you're doing. It just makes you know better and have an upper edge compared to people who will just work on a story without proper information and knowledge. You can also speak to people who you believe that they can help these people. You could be counselors. You're talking to a victim. You should not just be selfish that, oh, I just want to bring up this story. This story is going to be a huge story. It is going to get a lot of audience and all of that. Try to see how can you help this victim. We have a case that we were working on, and when we were interviewing this child, it was obvious that Mr. X was also going through some emotional trauma. The best Lawyers Alert could do is to reach out to a fellow organization who basically work more on psychosocial support. And it was just at a very, very good timing because we're able to help this child not to fall into depression. So when you're working on a story or when you're working on a case, you should not just be looking after your own case or what you can gain from this story. How can you also help this victim? Because at that point, these victims are very, very vulnerable and they need all of the help they can get. The fifth and the last point I'll be talking about today is educating the public. One of the huge responsibility the media has been saddled with is to enlighten and educate the public. Whatever information you are putting out there is what the media would take. You will see instances where people would hear information, but they'll be like, no, the radio never carry them. I never see them for TV. I never read them for paper, so I don't go believe them. So that is to tell us how much the people, the public, owes the media in the high esteem. So whatever information you put out there, that is what they're going to take. We should endeavor, we should try to put out the right information, we should try to put out the right news so that we don't change what they think, so that we don't give them the wrong information, because we know how bad wrong information can go. So we should try as much as possible to educate the media, to educate the public in the right way. We should try as much as possible to see how we can make the public to understand things that might be too complicated in the simplest of ways. You feel like, oh, how do I want to explain GBV in the most simplest form? You could act it in a play. It could be in a jingle, like maybe in pidgin language or in their dialects, but all in a way to pass the message. We should try as much as possible to pass the right content. When you're working on a story, try as much as possible to make sure that it goes through the necessary editing process. Whatever is out, and when you cause a damage, it can never be retrieved. We hope that you found this edition very, very helpful. Do what you like, leave comments below. We want to know your thoughts about this topic, and also you can give us suggestions on what you want us to discuss on our Thursday Literacy series. Also, you can follow us on our various social media platforms at Lawyers Alert Nigeria on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We hope to see you next week, same time. Bye for now.